Right, ladies and gentlemen, today we are going to discuss the implementation of Agile project management. And the topics that we are going to cover today will be a comparison between the traditional and Agile project management, um, the values and principles of Agile methodologies as dictated by Agile Manifesto. We are going to cover a few key terminologies which are used in Agile, but they are not, as common outside Agile. So we are going to use them. We are going to bust a few myths that, some misconceptions which are around Agile methodology. And we will also talk about some roles, rituals, benefit, and tools which are used in Agile. And then we are going to talk about how you can apply Agile in your own projects. And finally, we will have a quick comparison of some of the certifications in Agile which are available in the market, and what are the key features of those certifications, and just to help you decide if you want to go for any of them in future. So without any further ado, let's talk about Agile. So what is Agile in reality? If you can see the picture, if you understand the picture which is displayed on the screen, then we already have an idea what Agile is all about. It is that simple. So for instance, in the picture, I'm showing building of a ship in two different ways. One is the traditional way, which is on the top shown as the waterfall or traditional way, and in the bottom it's the Agile way of building a ship. So we started building a ship, a vessel, which has everything, all the requirements and all the bells and whistles. We will not consider the project to be completed until the ship is complete in a traditional delivery, because you can see the three stages on the screen of the delivery of the ship. There's nothing that you can do in the first stage because it's still work in progress. In the second stage, still there's nothing that you can do about it. You can't use this ship because still it's in a intermediate step, and only you can use the final product, which can go across the oceans and and cruise through the seas and all that. You can only use the final product. So and from the start till the end, it could take up to few months, if not years, to complete this product. And during this whole time, from start till the end, the product was not usable till the time it came into its final form. However, in Agile, the concept is very different. Agile believes in a terminology called minimum viable product, which means that from the very beginning, they will deliver a very basic product, which is the very basic form of the final product. For example, in this case, we will start with a raft. Then the raft will convert into something called probably a motorboat, which could cruise up and down the river, and then it will turn into a big boat which could go around in the sea for fishing, and then finally it will turn into a massive vessel which can transport the containers and people across the oceans. So the customer, even in the first stage of delivery, will get something to work upon. It's not going to be ideal. It's just a raft which will probably help them go across a river, 2 or 3 people in a raft and go across a river. But it is something that they can work with. It's not that they have to wait until the end for months and years for the final product to come and then they would start using that. They can use They can start use the product from the very beginning, and then that minimal viable product could turn into um, a bigger boat, and then with a with a big with a big boat, and then into um, a massive ship, which is the final product. So this is the whole idea of Agile, that it is usable, the product is usable from the very beginning rather than you wait till the end. Now, so what is the major difference? What are the major difference in the approaches of Agile and traditional delivery? So traditional delivery is represented by waterfall methodology in my screen, which is on the top, and in the bottom we have this Agile delivery. In the traditional delivery, which is waterfall, you have at least 5 stages of implementation. You capture the requirement, you you convert the design the requirements into the design, then you implement that design. The developers start writing the codes and all that. If it's a software product, then uh, you verify the product, whether the product has met the specifications, and then you release it to the production network, which is then gone to the BAU people, the operations people who will maintain the product. So that's the traditional delivery method, the traditional waterfall delivery, from requirement to the maintenance. There are 5 steps, and your software cannot be used in the requirements phase, because obviously you have just collected the requirement, you haven't even started writing the software. In the next step, which is the design phase, again you are just converting the requirement into a design. You're probably writing the high level design documents, or some other documentation you're doing. You haven't started writing the software. The software is not ready for the customer, and then you start writing the software. You do the coding and all that. Still, it's the software cannot be used by the customer, because you are still in the process of writing that. And then you verify it. The testers and the QA people, they come in. Again, no use for the customer. And then when you release it to the maintenance, that is, you have released it to the production network, only then the customer would be start benefiting from it. So throughout the process, it is of no use to the customer. But in agile delivery, it's different. You have divided the whole delivery into iterations or sprint. These are the 2 words which are interchangeable. I'm going to discuss it in the jargon buster when I'm going to reach that slide. But sprint is something where you have when you divide the whole big project into small iterations. That is, you have you plan the project, you plan some features, you design those features, you build those features, you test them, and then you review them, and then you launch them, and then you move to the next sprint. That is, you have divided the whole project into a number of sprints, and in those sprints, a few features will be delivered. The first sprint will be a very basic sprint, in which you will have some very basic features of those of that software. You plan, design, build, test, review, and launch them, and then you give it to the customer with the very basic product. They will start using it, and then you move to the next one, where you again plan, design, build, test, and review, and then you launch the next one. You plan, design, test, review, and then you go to the next one. It's just like, this concept is not new at all. When you, for instance, on your phones, on your smartphones as well, for instance, you download a software of you could have a WhatsApp software on your phone. Every now and then you get the new software releases. It doesn't mean that WhatsApp did not first reached the final product and then released the whole product to you to start using it. They just started with a very basic product in the beginning. Probably it could be just for text messaging. They gave you this this feature to start with. You started using it, and in the background they were developing the further features. Maybe that could be to do with the voice conversations. Then at some point they planned, designed, built, tested, and reviewed that voice feature, and then they released it to you as a launch, and then they moved on to probably next sprint, in which they included the voice conferencing as well, the video conferencing as well, which is the plan, design, build, test, review, and then launched it. And then probably they moved to the next sprint, which was to do with sharing the pictures and multimedia for sprint 4. So this is how they design the whole project. They could have gone for a waterfall approach, in which they would have captured all the requirements that could be from text messaging, and then voice messaging, and then voice conversations, and then video conversations, and then multimedia. They could have waited for all the group conversations and all that, and it could take them maybe 10 years to develop the final product. But with the agile delivery, they started giving you something called early benefit from the beginning. So that's the basic difference, a major contrast between the traditional delivery and agile delivery. That in agile delivery, you divide the whole project into sprints or iterations. As I said, that these two words are interchangeable. So what is this agile manifest? What is this agile methodology is based upon? What are the pillars of agile methodology? So there's something called Agile Manifesto, which is like a Bible of agile, which has got 4 values in it. Now I'm going to go through all these 4 values one by one. So let's start with this. Now, building a product successfully does not mean building a successful product. So that's very important, that building a product successfully does not create a value for the customer, because building successful product does. Therefore, it is logical to aim at building a successful product instead of aiming at building a product successfully. So before the arrival of Agile Manifesto, this was not the case in the software industry. Software development was being done by following a very rigid process, and a lot of importance was given to the documentation. So developers cared only about following the contract instead of caring about delivery of a useful product. As the complexity of the product kept increasing, so did the delivery time as well. So what was delivered was not meeting customer expectations, and product were failing at a rapid rate. And then in year 2001, 17 developers, they came together to discuss a lightweight method for software development. They came up with a manifesto which had 4 values and 12 principles in it to make the software development process more agile. And this manifesto is known as the Agile Manifesto. And these values and principles brought tremendous value to the software development process, and now they are being used in the development of non-software products such as computers and motor vehicles, medical devices, food, clothing, music, etc. So what are those 4 values? Now, number 1 is individual interaction to be preferred over process and tools. So that's the very first value. Now in waterfall, a lot of attention is given to the process being followed. Waterfall method itself is a 5-step process, as we just went through that in the previous slides, which had to be followed to develop the software. Um, fol following a stringent process makes the development process rigid, and changes could not be brought early when they were required. And additionally, a well-defined process is not the answer to every problem as well. No matter how well-defined the process is, there will always be some barriers which couldn't have been anticipated by any person or tools, and such barriers are overcome when individuals sit together and discuss and find the solution of the problem rather than just following the process. So that is the first value, that in Agile, um, i- um, the the interaction between the individual is preferred over the usage of processes and tools. Um, and then the next one is working software over comprehensive document. So what does it mean is that the the waterfall method starts with heavy documentation in the beginning. Um, Before you even start developing the product, you start with a massive documentation. We all know that. Um, a lot of documentation needs to be done before the start of the developing of the software. Features, the specifications, layouts, requirements, test cases, they're all documented long before the arrival time of the actual software. And this approach does have its does ha- drawbacks, because what you have documented will be outdated before you are done with it. You may end up creating many features which will never be used by the end user. The time spent on the documentation of such features will all go wasted. Um, Too much documentation also delays the project, which later becomes the opportunity cost for the business. Therefore, Agile Manifesto favors working um, favors the working software over the comprehensive documentation. Now, instead of wasting time in creating a lot of documents and and then taking feedback on the basis of those documents, we should take the feedback on the basis of a working software. A basic software with very basic features should be created first, and then it should be given to the end users and the stakeholders. Then, on the basis of the feedback received from the users, further development should be carried out to improve the software. So that's the idea behind working software over the comprehensive documentation. Now, the third one is the concept of customer collaboration over contract negotiations. So in traditional project management, in traditional waterfall implementation, the customer is usually involved only in the beginning of the project when we are negotiating upon the contract. They do get involved sometimes in the midst of the project as well, because if there is a change request, if they want to add something to the project, some additional feature, then there's a possibility, again, possibility of having a customer interaction. And finally, once the product is ready and it is rolled out, then the customer is involved just to give them a demonstration of what we have developed from them. So this approach actually neglected the value of customer feedback during the project, because the customer did not see uh, the product during its development. Uh, so when software is developed without a constant feedback of the customer, the end result is often a product which does not satisfy the customer completely. And this is why Agile Manifesto focuses upon uh, customer collaboration over the contract negotiation. Now, Agile focuses upon taking constant feedback from the customer throughout the process. So whatever is being developed is also being seen by the customer during its development, and whenever the customer feels that the project is going in the wrong direction, the customer has the opportunity to provide a feedback and bring it back in the right direction. So that is that is the third value, and the fourth and the final value is responding to change. Agile Manifesto focuses upon responding to change over following a plan. So just to give you an elaboration of that, traditional software development methods are generally change averse. What happens is that in the traditional approach, we create detailed plans in the beginning and then agree upon those plans with our stakeholders, with our customers, and then follow them through the project. And usually we are quite rigid with those plans, because once the plan is done, we start designing the project, we start taking the requirements, we create the design out of those requirements, we start developing that, and in the middle of the development, for instance, if the customer comes and say that, oh, you know what, I've changed my mind, can you please remove these these features and add those features, and at that stage in the traditional uh, delivery, we don't like that. We just say that, look guys, we have captured our requirements, we have done the design, and now we are building it. It's very difficult to go back and change everything. So usually the chances of making those changes are very small, and it takes a lot of work to to go back and do those changes. So that's why we become very change averse uh, while we are following the traditional project implementation methodologies. Therefore, in now being rigid does not only lead to creating an improper product, because the customer could change their requirements, the product that we were working upon could become obsolete for them while we were creating it. So so um, so that's why it could lead to the creation of an improper product, but also makes us miss the chances of making a product uh, which uh, which which is better for the customer. So therefore, Agile Manifesto favors responding to change over following a plan. When software is developed with agility, we start with a plan um, that gives us enough idea of the direction towards we want to move. Then as we proceed and see new events unfolding in front of us, we incorporate those realities into the ongoing work. New events are not seen as obstacles, but anything new becomes an opportunity for us to provide more value to our customer. So these are the the four values um, on which our Agile Manifesto is based. Now let's talk about the 12 principle as well. That what are those principles on which I mean that is the extension of the same Agile Manifesto. We had four values in Agile Manifesto and 12 principle as well. So let's go through these principles very briefly. I'm not going to to you know to spend too much time on that. Just going to take you through that very briefly, and then we will go to the other stuff that is to do with the key concepts in the Agile. So satisfaction for the customer, satisfy the customer. That is one of the Agile principles. We know that we have just discussed about that that we take feedback from the customer during the implementation of the during the creation of the software. We are not averse to the change. I mean, if the customer changes their mind, we can change the features of the I mean, for the customers as well, for their product that we are working upon. So, and that would lead to more customer satisfaction. We welcome change. Again, we have just talked about that um, that if during the implementation of the project, and if the customer wants to change the course, they want to add or remove the features, the agile delivery does have the flexibility to do so. Deliver frequently. Not now, by saying deliver frequently, we mean that from the very beginning we start delivering. Um, we start delivering uh, a working software. It's not the case that just going back to the example of the ship. I mean, in traditional methodology, we are not delivering frequently. We are only delivering once. We started with capturing the requirements. We designed it. We developed it. We tested it. We 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 then gave it to the customer. That was the point when we delivered to the customers. So that was not frequent delivery. That was delivery only once. But in this particular case, we deliver in different sprints or iterations where we first gave a raft to the customer, then we probably gave a motorboat to the customer, then we gave a big boat to the customer, which would go into the sea to catch the fish, and then we finally delivered a big vessel to the customer for the transportation of the goods. So we deliver frequently uh, by following the agile methodologies. We work together. By working together, we mean that the project team will have to collaborate much more in agile methodology, because we prefer to have interaction with each other. We prefer to have interaction with the customer. We take their feedback and all that. So that's why one of the principle is working together, which is very important. Trust and support. Obviously, there has to be a lot of trust within the team, and between the customer and the supplier as well. Um, to to make to make agile methodology work. Face-to-face conversation. Now, this is very important as well. Uh, I mean, we started uh, agile implementations with face-to-face. The people were meant to sit in a room. The delivery teams were meant to sit together and do the stuff together, at least during the meetings, during the key meetings, which we are going to discuss, during the key rituals which we will discuss. They were meant to be together, but I don't know, with all this COVID-19, I mean, uh, in the future how these methodologies are going to evolve. But for now, the principle is that face-to-face conversations are preferred over conference calls and video conferencing. um, Working software, we just talked about that uh, working software from the beginning. You start with something rather than with a piece of paper. You start with a very basic form of a product or a software which the customer can use, and then we move ahead with the improved features. Sustainable development means that uh, you know the development is divided into iterations, and each and every iteration is going to give you something. So there will be some product which will be coming out from those iterations, uh, to for the customer to use. Continuous attention, obviously, from the very beginning till the end of the product uh, delivery, there is not a single point where we lose the attention, because we are delivering constantly. It's not that we are working upon a design, so the the software architects or the design people are working at the moment, while the developers do not have any attention on that, because because in agile we are all working together on a particular user story. So there has to be a continuous attention all the time. Maintain simplicity. We want to keep it simple, and we want to keep it straight. We don't want uh, to overcomplicate, and that is why we have a concept of user stories and sprints, which we will talk about, which you know which which helps us keeping things simple. Self-organized team. Self-organized teams is a concept which is given by Agile as well, where the teams are empowered to pick and choose what they want to deliver in their sprints, and then they can they can decide that how much time it's going to take rather than they are told. They can decide by themselves that that um, that how much uh, time and effort will require them to do that, and um, you know uh, and uh, they can decide their own direction where they want to go. And then the final one is reflect and adjust. Now there are two rituals in Agile. One is uh, called sprint review. At the end of every sprint, uh, you have a review, and then there's something called retrospective, uh, which is also a review meeting where the whole team, they sit together, they reflect upon what they have achieved in the previous sprints, and then based on that, you know, they they see that what did work for them, what did not work for them, and then for the next sprint, they 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 improve their ways of working. Now, in traditional project management, we all know that there's something called lesson learned, which happens. You started the project in year 2017. You throughout the throughout 2017, 2018, and 2019, you developed a software for 3 years, and in the end, you did a lessons learned, uh, and then you just filed those lessons learned into some repository, and then you moved on. Those lessons learned were not of any use to you because you only did it um, as an exercise in the end, and those lessons did not benefit you during the implementation of the project because you did it in the end. But over here in Agile, since you have broken the project into small sprint and you are capturing those lessons after every sprint, so you did sprint one, you captured those lessons from the retrospective, and then you implemented those lessons into the next sprint, and then in the next sprint again you captured those lessons, and then you implement it in sprint 3, and so on and so forth. So this is how reflection, frequent reflection, uh, benefits us in moving further in Agile. Now let's talk about a few terminologies over here which are used quite frequently in Agile, and people are generally not aware of what each and every of those um, terminology mean. So let's start with something called a user story. So user story are actually features. They are product features, requirements, or tasks that add value to the end customer. Now, by adding value, we mean that it is something that the end customer would pay for, and they would find it really, really valuable and important. If something does not add value to the customer, then it cannot be considered as a user value, but rather a task or a subtask. So they are written in a very specific form, very succinctly and briefly. There's a very specific, format of writing that, which is shown on the screen. It says that um, that as a user, like as a customer, I want my, for instance, Facebook credentials to be used as a login on a money transfer website so that I do not have to create a new account. So when I said that as a customer, is that, as a customer, I mean customer, and then I'm just specifying a goal that what I want to do, as a customer, what I want to do. So what I want is that my Facebook user ID and password, they could be used for probably on a Western Union money transfer website for a login. So that is my goal. And why I want to do that? So that I don't have to, go around and creating a new user ID and password on another platform and then waste my time. So that's my user story. That's a feature that I'm specifying. So in Agile, the features are actually called user stories, and all of those features are written in in this format as succinctly and as briefly as possible to create the simplicity. So that is what we call as a user story. Then the next one are called backlogs. There are two types of backlogs. One is a product backlog and the other one is a sprint backlog. For instance, we are developing a word processing software, something like Microsoft Word or something like Microsoft uh, yeah, Microsoft Word, for instance. So if we are developing that, the user stories will be given to us. Somebody will say that I want, as a user, as a customer, to be able to write colorful text so that it creates more versatility in the product. Somebody could say that. So that is a user story. Somebody could say that I want to create tables in the Microsoft uh, um, uh, product. S- Uh, no, sorry, I want as a user to create tables so that uh, the Microsoft Word can interact with Microsoft Excel. So that is another user story. Somebody else would come back and say that I want, as a customer, to create shapes so that it again adds more versatility and it can interface with Microsoft PowerPoint. So these are different user stories coming to us, different features coming to us. Another one could say that I want to be able to type numbers uh, into into the uh, into this new product. The goal is to type the numbers, and the benefit would be that it could be more comprehensive word processor. So all these user stories would go into something called product backlog. So product backlog will be a repository where everybody is throwing their user stories in. That it's a massive um, backlog repository which will be full of user stories for this particular product. Now we have to plan our first sprint. We now we now have to start working upon those user stories to to create the product out of them. So product uh, what we will do is that we will pick a few of the user stories from the massive product backlog, and we will put them into something called sprint backlog. Sprint backlog is only relevant to a particular sprint, while the product backlog is relevant to the whole project. But sprint backlog, is only relevant to that particular sprint in which we are working upon. So, for instance, we had user story 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 user stories we have. In sprint 1, the team decides that okay, we are going to work on only user story 1 in this particular sprint. So they will pull user story 1 from the product backlog into their sprint backlog, and they say that this sprint is going to be only for 2 weeks, and then we will uh, uh, we will deliver the product based upon this user story 1. So for the next 2 weeks in that sprint or in that iteration, they will work upon their user story 1. They will create a product out of that. They will finish the sprint 1, and then when they move to sprint 2, they will again go to the product backlog and see, okay, so what's in there? Okay, now we will pick user story 4 maybe this time, and we will base our sprint 2 on user story 4. So now they will produce another one, the enhancement of the product based upon the new user story, and then so on and so forth. So that's how your product backlog and sprint backlogs work. And then there's something called story points. So there's a story point is a concept of categorizing of I mean that's categorizing the complexity of your user story. So you assign the story points to each and every user story you create. We can use the something called a scale of maybe 1, 2, 3, and 4 and 5, um, to to define the level of complexity for your um, for your user story. Or maybe we can go for something called t-shirt sizing. We can say that small, medium, large, extra large. Uh, so the whole idea is that we just want um, uh, to to quantify the complexity of the story that we are working upon. Not every story is going to be at the same level of complexity. Some of them will be simple, some of them will be more complex, some of them will be more difficult, some of them will, some features will take less effort, some features will take more effort, some will take less time, some will take more time. So we have to to say that, okay, it's this particular user story is of uh, of um, of scale 1, or we can say that this particular user story is of t-shirt size is small, or we can say that user story 4 maybe is of um, t-shirt size extra large, or we can say a number that from 1 to 5 it is of complexity 5. So these are the things, you know by user points we try to quantify the the complexity of the user stories, which help us in planning our sprint. Then we have something called velocity. So velocity is actually the speed of execution. So the number of story points that you deliver over a particular sprint is called your velocity in Agile. Now, at the beginning, you make a guess of how many story points you will deliver in a particular sprint. You will say that, okay, my guess is that I'm going to deliver maybe um, 10 story points in a particular sprint. Now, after a couple of sprints, you will be able to do an average of the number of story points, and then you can conclude that on average your team is able to deliver probably 8 story points over a particular sprint. So this will be your velocity by which you're delivering. You will also be able to evaluate your velocity at the end of your sprint. So once you have delivered what you have planned. So your velocity is not what you planned for, but it's actually what you delivered. It's not that you have planned to deliver 10 story points in a sprint, but you ended up delivering only 6. So 10 is not your velocity. Your velocity is actually 6. So that's why we are saying that it's not what you planned for, it's actually what you delivered for. Then there's a concept of swim lanes. It's just like lanes in the swimming pool, where you have a few columns. So this is like um, a Kanban board, where you try to give a visual representation of the states of the stories on your Kanban board. This is something that I'm going to go a bit more in detail, but for now, just retain this swim lanes in your mind, and I'm going to, when I show you the tools section of this presentation, I'm going to give you a bit more of an overview of what those swim lanes are. Then there's something called minimum viable product. Minimum viable product is something that we have just discussed when we talked about the example of ship and the raft. I mean, this is another presentation, and this is screen where somebody is trying to develop a car in a traditional way, where they started with a wheel, then 2 wheels are connected with each other, still not being used, they can't be used. Then the structure of the car without the wheels still can't be used, and then finally the car in the end, which can be used, but throughout the process, the customer was not able to make use of the product which was being developed. But compared to that, you started with a skateboard in Agile. Again, the customer can use it to start with, to go from place A to place B. Then you converted that skateboard into a scooty. Again, it's an improvement. Then to a bicycle. Again, the customer can use that. The bicycle converted into a motorbike, and then that motorbike converted into a car. So at every stage, customer is using something, and that is what you call as minimum viable product. And in sprint one, where we developed a skateboard, the minimum viable product was the skateboard. Yes, the order was to develop the car, but for sprint one, only a skateboard could be developed which the customer could use. So the minimum viable product, the MVP, was a skateboard. In sprint two, um, the MVP was a scooty. In sprint three, the MVP was a bicycle. In sprint four, it was the motorbike. And finally, in sprint five, the MVP turned into a full-fledged project, into a full-fledged product, uh, which is the actual car. So Agile gives us the concept of minimum viable product as well, that what minimum viable product we will be working upon in a particular sprint. What are we going to develop and give to the customer? And then we have a concept of release or increment. A release or increment means that when you have converted your user stories into you picked a set of user stories from your product backlog, you took them into your sprint backlog, you developed a product, a minimum viable product based upon your user stories, and when you give it to the customer to use, that becomes your increment or your release. So it's as simple as that. And finally, the sprint, we have talked about sprints that these are the phases. These are the uh, uh, time box plans in which you worked upon your user stories and you deliver them, and then you give a benefit to your customer. So that is something which is called sprint, or uh, your iteration. It's a period of time over which the user stories are delivered. Generally, the sprints are of 2 weeks, but it's not set in stone. It's just a recommendations. The sprint can take up to 3 or 4 weeks or more than that, but the recommendation is that to keep it uh, you know not less than 2 weeks, but don't you can go beyond 2 weeks as well, but don't try to go overboard. Don't don't make your sprint overly lengthy, because it will kill the purpose. So keep your sprint somewhere between 2 to 3 to 4 weeks, and that's it. So let's talk about uh, a few roles available in agile teams. The roles that we have are of product owners, uh, scrum masters, and your delivery team. So product owner, who is the product owner? The product owner is uh, the end customer, or a person who represents the end customer. And it's usually the case when the product owners are actually representing the customers. They are not the actual customers. They define and provide the priorities and input to the project team based on what the team show to them uh, the product that they have developed in the demo session. So they are the ones who say that, okay, the customer wants a product like a word processor which is able to type the text, which is able to have different fonts in it, which can man, you know uh, manipulate the shapes, the numbers, and all that. That's what the customer wants. So that's the product owner which is saying to you, they are the custodians of all the user stories. They are the ones who take the features from I mean on behalf of the customers. I mean, a product owner is sitting in a company, he or she is interfacing with the marketing team, they are interfacing with the user community, and they are taking all their features together. They are the representative of the customer. They are taking all the required features from them, and they are putting them into a, a product backlog, maintaining a product backlog. And then there's something called Scrum Master. A Scrum Master is a person who facilitates the meeting, who plans, who remove the team impediments. They liaise with the product owner and ensure that the team remains on the task. Uh, so you can think about them as the team leaders. That could be project managers, they could be lead developers, or pretty much anybody who wants to be a scrum master. It's not that only a project manager could be a scrum master. A person from the team could come up and they say that for a particular sprint they would like to be scrum master. The role could be rotated between different between different participants of the team. And then finally, the delivery team. Now, the delivery team is comprised of, the user, the developers, the testers, the designers, the solution architects. They all um, come together and they form a delivery team. So Agile keeps it very simple. Product owner, Scrum Master, and delivery team. Agile doesn't care that what's happening inside the delivery team, what are the roles and responsibilities, being shared between the different team members. They just keep it simple that all I see is a delivery team, and within the delivery team, you can, uh, you know, uh, decide among your roles what you want to do and how you want to do. But as far as Agile is concerned, they only recognize product owner, Scrum Master, and the delivery team. So these are uh, a few roles in the Agile team. Now let's talk about the tools which can be used into Agile. So you can see a burn down chart over here. Now a chart that shows the remaining work to be done and the progress over the time and the team's velocity on the on the x-axis you have the time uh, of the sprint, and on the y-axis you have the effort. So here you are saying that, okay, iteration 1 or sprint 1, iteration 2, iteration 3, or sprint 1, sprint 2, and sprint 3, which is displayed over the x-axis, and over the y-axis you are seeing the effort, that okay, the story points from 0 to going to the top of of 160 uh, uh, like as a maximum. So in iteration 1 you 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 delivered somewhere around 10 or maybe 12 points, and then in 10 points, and then 10 points, and that's how you're doing it. The story, your velocity is probably decreasing over time. That's how probably you have planned for it. So that's your burn down chart, where you can do you can do this chart manually um, in some sort of an Excel sheet, or you can use tools like Jira, which do the burn down for you in an automatic fashion. The great thing about these burn down chart is that you can see several things about your project and your delivery. For example, you can see the total amount of work, the amount of work which is remaining, and even you can calculate your velocities, that how many story points you are delivering over a particular sprint or over an iteration, and how much is remaining and all that. So you can do these things. Now Kanban board. So Kanban board, just go back to the swim lanes, which I show you over here. So in the Kanban board, you can see some columns. Your first column is to do, the second column is in progress, and the third column is done. So this is a very basic Kanban board. People have more than 3 columns as well. Somebody Sometimes people um, include a few more items, but just a very basic structure is to do, in progress, and done. I mean, this is more than enough, to be honest, but sometimes people do include a bit more. So in to do, you put all your user stories on your post-its, those yellow posters or your red post-its. You write the user stories on them. That's why they say that keep the user stories very simple so that it can be written on a post-it size paper. It doesn't have to be a War and Peace novel. It can just come on a piece of paper so that you put it on your Kanban board on your to-do. So when you start your sprint one, your sprint, all your posted user stories would fall under this to-do column of, you know, you have separated it by different functions like design, development, and marketing. So you put them all here, and then as you start working upon them, you just pick a few of them and you put them in the progress section, and then you know this means that okay, you are working upon that, and as soon as you have finished that, then you move it to your done section, and then you probably pull a few more user stories into your progress section. You work upon them and you take them to your done section. So that is a tool which is quite visual, which gives you a full overview of where your sprint is going, what is what what user stories are you working upon during that sprint, um, wh- which of them are completed and which are them are still being done, and which of them you still have to work upon. Um, Kanban boards are sometimes they are physical boards, and I've seen in quite a lot of organizations they prefer to have a massive uh, whiteboard in a particular meeting room where they divide the whiteboard into three columns, and they put the physical sticking notes on that. But now there are few uh, quite a lot of sophisticated software tools available in the market which are giving the Kanban boards in the software like Jira, etc. So these are the two basic tools of Agile: the burn down chart and the Kanban board. Now, moving on to a few rituals of Agile. So these rituals are actually your sprint planning, your daily stand-ups, also called as scrums, your sprint review, and your retrospective. So these are the meetings, these are the rituals which um, which are kind of mandatory in Agile. Uh, because Agile is not just a methodology, it is much more than a methodology. It's like a culture. So, and when you have a culture, then there are certain rituals in that culture as well, which needs to be adhered. So, sprint planning is the first one. Now, sprint planning is actually a meeting where the team defines which user stories they will work upon in an upcoming sprint over the next 2 weeks. If the sprint is for 2 weeks, then it's for the team to make a decision where what they want to really do in that sprint. Uh, so as a team, you review the scope of the work, your priorities, and what you believe is achievable during that particular sprint, and then you you go ahead. So basically, they are going to the product backlog. They From the product backlog, they just say that okay, I will take user story 1, 2, 5, and 7. They pull it into their sprint backlog, and then they start working upon that. So that's why they call it sprint planning, because they plan for their um, next sprint in that. Then there is something called a daily stand-up or scrum. So daily stand-up is like the whole team, including the developers, uh, I mean the user, the development team and the scrum master. Both of them, product owner is not mandatory, but the development team and the scrum master, every day they come together for 15 minutes. The the maximum 15 minutes. It can't be more than 15 minutes. It has to be time boxed. It has to be finished in 15 minutes. So all of them come together and they answer three basic questions. Everybody is given an opportunity to answer three basic questions in as small of a time as possible. That what did they do yesterday that helped them achieve their sprint goal? What are they going to do today? And what are the impediments in their view that are going to stop them from achieving their sprint goal? So these are the three questions, and the reason they call that daily stand-ups, not a daily meeting or not a daily sit down or nothing like that. The reason we call it stand-up is that people do usually stand up and do these meetings, and the reason for standing up is that when you stand up and you talk too much, then you don't want to stand up for that long because you feel tired. So that's why people are made to stand up and deliver this talk in as few words and sentences. Don't go over the board and writing a war and peace novel. Just say, what did you do yesterday, just in few sentences. What are you going to do today in as less words as possible, and what are the impediments you think that are going to stop you from achieving that. That's it. 15 minutes. The whole team should be able to discuss that. It can finish under 15 minutes. That's brilliant, but going beyond 15 minutes is simply not allowed. And then the other ritual. So these stand-ups is a daily ritual. Then there's a ritual called sprint review. Sprint review is a meeting between the product owner, the development team, and the scrum master, where the team presents to the product owner what they have delivered over the sprint. So they committed to deliver something in the sprint planning. They worked upon that during the sprint, and now in the sprint review, they sit with the product owner and they demonstrate the product to them that they have worked upon. Um, so this is scheduled right after the sprint finishes, and during that meeting, the team goes over the stories that they were working upon, that they delivered, and also the stories that they probably could not deliver. They did try to deliver them, but they could not deliver for X, Y, and Z reasons. So they go over that as well. And the idea is not to go and find out or go for a witch hunt to know that who is guilty for not being able to deliver, but the idea is to learn that that why they thought that they would be able to deliver a user story, but they could not deliver that. So just that they could improve for the next user story, for the next sprint. Sorry. So this is a review which happens after every sprint. Now, finally, there's something called sprint retrospective. Uh, the sprint retrospective happens immediately after the sprint review. Now, this is also a review meeting, but there's a difference, right? So first you plan, you have planned you have planned your sprint by taking in the user story into your sprint backlog. Then in the sprint you developed upon those user stories the product. Then immediately when the sprint is finished, you sat for 2 to 4 hours with the product owner, and you demonstrated to them that what you have done, what you were not able to do, and all that. So this is your sprint review. And after the sprint review, you have a sprint retrospective. In the sprint retrospective, you are not going through the product because you have already discussed the product into the sprint review. In sprint retrospective, you are actually going to discuss that what went well in your sprint, the behaviors, what could be improved and how can we improve that. You do some sort of a self-analysis on how you were working, your problem analysis, the things related to maybe logistics and framework improvement and all those kind of things. These are the things which are discussed into your retrospective, and these also happens after the sprint review. So sprint planning, sprint review, and then retrospective review. These are the four key rituals that you have in Agile. Now, let's talk about a few myths. I'm not going to go through all of them because they are quite self-explanatory, but I'm just going to touch upon a few of them, and then we will take it from there. So there's a myth that says there is no documentation in Agile, and as I said that it's a myth buster, so it is a myth. The This misconception is probably related to a misunderstanding, um, which is actually coming out of one of the assertions of the Agile Manifesto, because Agile Manifesto says that working software over comprehensive documentation. So some people, they just thought that, oh, actually there is no documentation in Agile at all. Uh, because we are talking about working software over comprehensive documentation, so there could be no documentation. Well, that's not the fact. I mean, all we are saying is that you can see there is no indication that Agile means no documentation or the documentation is not needed. What it says that focus should be on delivering a working product instead of investing major time in creating a detailed documentation that may reduce the percentage of your success to deliver a working product. So there is some basic type of documentation that is very common during each sprint or iteration, such as your requirement metrics, your user stories, etc. The only difference is the amount of detail and the amount of effort and the formality that you put in while creating that documentation. You are still creating those user stories. You are maintaining a repository to create that. So you can't say that there is no documentation. There is still documentation. It's just that things need to change. Then I mean, next one is that, oh, there is no deadline in Agile. Well, and that is a misconception which probably came out of from the fact that Agile is very welcoming to the change. So because it welcomes the change, I mean, the work, the time, it could take a bit more time to deliver the product from a traditional waterfall perspective, and that's why a person who has only worked upon traditional waterfall, it says that, well, there is no time frame in Agile, so there are no deadlines. So it's not it's not like a traditional project, like a traditional project. So now remember that in the end there is a customer who is paying for the product, and there is no chance that that customer would want to work with a supplier who has no respect for the committed timelines, because they also have their own targets to meet, and they would like the product to be delivered on a certain date. So you can't say that there are no deadlines. There are deadlines. It's just that now your deadlines could be, instead of saying that I'm going to start the project in January 2017 and I'm going to finish it in January 2019, in exact 2 years, you are just saying that no, what we are going to do, we are going to do a number of sprints, uh, and uh, and we are not going to plan for 2 years. uh, we will only plan for our next sprint. We will say that we are going to give you these features in the next 4 weeks time, and then we will decide which features we are going to work upon. Our deadlines are going to be only for our sprints, not for the whole project. We are going to work from the features perspective rather than working up towards an end date by which the whole product should be ready. So these are the deadlines. And I believe that the customer would appreciate these deadlines more, because they would know that instead of waiting for 2 years for a big project, for a big product, they would have small chunks of the same product every month or every 2 months, that that they could use. So that's another uh, uh, misconception. Then there is another one which says that, well, there is um, I mean the this agile methodology, it is a silver bullet, some sort of a silver bullet which is going to solve all your problems. No, it's not going to solve all your problems. It's not going to polish your shoes. It's not going to iron your clothes. It's not going to cook your food. It is something which is going to be very specific to some specific kind of situations as well. I mean, if you have uh, teams um, which are not agile friendly, which are not aware of of how this is going to work. If you do not have the right culture into your organization, then agile is not going to solve any of your problems. It's going to create more problems. So you need to have the right environment for agile uh, to work upon. I mean, if you have customers who do not like frequent interactions, who would rather prefer to have a product after 2 years, uh, for any reason, I'm not saying that's right or wrong, for any reason, then agile is not going to be of any use, because you're not getting um, a customer feedback from them. The customer is not working with you. Then you would rather go for a waterfall way of working. Um, Another one is that agile is only for the IT projects. Again, yes, agile started with software. Yes, it did start with the IT projects, but it is not restricted to IT and software anymore. You can Google it. You can find people are planning their holidays. People are planning their weddings. People are even manufacturing via agile methodologies. So it is not restricted to software or IT anymore. So these are a few things few of the myths which uh, which needs to be busted for agile. Um, we will just now going to discuss that what you need to do um, to implement agile in your projects. So before you start doing agile, you start with sprint zero. That is your planning, where you define your team, that who will be part of the team, and what would be their roles and responsibility. What are they going to be doing? Who is going to be the product owner? Who is going to be the scrum master? And then in the development team, people within that team, it doesn't have to be transparent to the organization. Um, but within that team, people can decide among themselves that I'm going to develop, I'm going to test, and I'm going to write the feature and all that. So team definitions and role and responsibility is done. The next step is to agree upon the rituals, like on which dates are we going to have our rituals, like sprint planning, when the sprint planning meeting is going to happen, and then when sprint is going to start, when a sprint is going to end, when are we going to have a sprint review meeting, and when are we going to have a sprint retrospective meeting. All these things, all these dates are decided, and you have your daily scrum or your daily stand-up. So you need to agree upon where this stand-up is going to happen. Is this going to happen in a certain meeting room? Is it going to happen on somebody's desk? It can happen on somebody's desk. People can just join together on somebody's desk and go and have that meeting. Or is it during COVID-19 situation like these, when people are working from home? Or is it going to happen over voice or video conferencing and all that? So this is something that needs to be decided. Then you get your tools ready, that you have your Kanban board ready. You have your, if you're using physical tools, then your markers and your pencils and your whatever, your 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 sticking posters, all of them, you get them ready for for your Kanban board. Or if you're going digital, then your Jira software or your Monday or whatever, you use those tools. So they could be, you could get them ready for your agile, for your delivery, for your sprint delivery. And then you do your due diligence by creating your business case and defining your key requirements, um, and your budget, etc. I mean, this is something like, for your sprint planning, you actually are going to go through what is your business case by which you are going to that is behind the project, why you are delivering that project, why you are developing this particular product, etc., etc. What are your key requirements? You are going through your user stories. What is the budget under which that needs to be delivered? Then you have to determine your constraints, the budget, the time, the business cycle, quality, all those things. You have to ascertain them, just like normal project management. And finally, you define the dates on which you will release and you will test the product for your sprint. So these are the things that you have to do before starting your your agile delivery. And now, when you have decided that you have to go agile, you have to start delivering. So now you are ready to do agile, you are ready to deliver. So uh, so you create your user stories. You have created the lists of your user stories. You assign them the story points, like you are sizing up the project now. You define your priorities. That is, you are going through by defining the priorities, you mean that you are going through your product backlog, and from your product backlog you are pulling some user stories into your sprint in your sprint backlog. And then you 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 just start working upon them. And if you just start executing those sprints, and at the end of the sprint, you just sit together with the team, do a sprint review. And once the sprint review is done, you do a retrospective review, in which we have just discussed about that idea. You're going through the behaviors, you're going through the logistics, the framework, what went well and what did not go that well. So now I'm going to talk about this final slide, which is what are the Agile certifications available in the market, and what are they all about. So let's talk about, these are the four. By the way, there are quite a lot of certifications available, but I'm only talking about these four certifications because I can't cover all of them. One of them is PMI ACP. PMI is Project Management Institute, which is quite famous for PMP certification for project managers. So ACP is Agile Certified Practitioner, which is also coming out from the same body. There's a prerequisite to take that certification. You have to spend 2,000 hours of you have to have 2,000 hours of project management experience, and you have to have 1,500 hours of Agile experience, and you have to do a 21 hours of Agile training, which the online trainings are also acceptable. It's not supposed to be face-to-face only. The form of assessment is 120 MCQs, multiple choice questions, that you need to answer in 3 hours. You don't have a passing score. The passing score is not disclosed by them. They have their own software which decides whether you have passed or not, without telling you how they have assessed you. For PMI members, the price is 435 USD. For non-members, will be slightly more than that. I think it will be somewhere around 500 USD, something like that. After passing the exam, you have to renew your certification every 3 years by submitting professional development units. Professional development units are the study hours or or the development hours. You may have earned your development units by doing some further study. You could have done some research. You could have delivered some lectures the way I'm delivering this lecture for you. So this is going to add towards my PDUs if I had this PMI ACP certification. So this is what and this is how you get that renewed. The purpose behind this certification, why PMI has introduced this certification, is because PMI wants to standardize the use of Agile across many Agile methodologies. This is something that we haven't gone through because of the lack of time, but there are quite a lot of Agile flavors available. There is Scrum, there is Kanban, there is Extreme Programming, there is Lean, there is uh, Crystal. So I mean, these are just a few of methodologies which are on top of my head. They have, the basics are still the same that we have just gone through, but they do vary. They have different tools, they have different low-level tools, they have different low-level structures. Um, so um, uh, so when you are studying for PMI ACP, you capture all of this. It's not only limited to just one methodology, but across all the methodologies uh, which are available in Agile. You go through all of them. You develop an understanding of all of them. So so that's the idea behind PMI ACP. The target audience are the people who are actually willing to demonstrate their experience and their understanding of Agile practices. Now, the next one is CSM, which is called Certified Scrum Master. So this is introduced by an organization called Scrum Alliance. Um, there's a prerequisite for this certification. You need to complete a 2 days of a training course by an authorized trainer. And you have to take that exam within 3 days after that training. It is an online uh, exam of 30 MCQs, which needs to be done in 1 hour. All you have to do is to, answer only 24 of them correctly, attain 68% as a minimum, and get that certification. The price is actually included into the training because you don't buy the CSM, um, you know, um, certification by paying a fees towards that. You have to buy the whole training package of 2 days, and once you have done the training, the trainer is going to give you the user ID and password of a portal where you go and log in, and then you take the exam within 30 days. The renewal is actually done every 2 years by submitting 21 Scrum educational units. It's the same concept as in PMI. The PDUs for professional development units. Over here, they're calling it as Scrum educational units. Um, the motive behind upon this one is the clarification and the promotion of Scrum. The target audience are people who wants to take their first step towards Scrum mastery. So this one is only focused upon the Scrum flavor of Agile. It does not cover Kanban, Extreme Programming, Crystal, or anything else. It is only about Scrum. So, and since Scrum is the most used methodology, it's the most popular methodology as well. That is why it makes sense that you start with Scrum, and probably in future if you want to to expand more, you can do that. But Scrum is more than enough to start with. Uh, then there's another one which is called PSM1. This is called Professional Scrum Master 1, and this is awarded by an organization called Scrum.org. Um, or you don't need to there's no prerequisite as such. All you need to do is to read a document called Scrum Guide, which is available on Scrum.org website. There is no requirement of a training. All you have to do is to pay 150 pound, or sorry, 150 USD US dollars to to buy that exam, and and it's an MCQ based exam as well. You have around 80 MCQs that you need to answer in 1 hour, and out of 80, 68 needs to be correct. So you have to achieve 85%. There is no renewal required as well. You just pass it and it's for life. Again, the purpose is for the clarification and promotion of Scrum. It is again only focused on Scrum, just like CSM, and just like CSM, it is targeted to the people who are willing to take their first step towards Scrum mastery as well. And last but not the least is Prince2 Agile. It is issued by the organization which issues Prince2 certification, the Exelos Limited. The Exelos the Prince2. So the prerequisite is this: that if you have Prince2 Foundation certification, just a normal Prince2 Foundation certification, then you can take the Prince2 Agile Practitioner certificate to pass that. Or you could have Prince2 Agile Foundation certification as well. So Prince2 Agile Foundation and Prince2 um, Agile Practitioner, they are two different certifications. I mean, those who are aware of Prince2, they know that first you take a foundation exam, which is an MCQ exam only. You pass. I mean, you are given 50 MCQs. You have to do 28 of them correct, and then you get your foundation certificate. That's a closed book exam. Then you go for a practitioner one, where again you do 50 MCQs. You have to do 30 of them correct to pass it. That is an open book exam, and that open book is only the training material that you are provided. So it's the same thing. The way it happens in a normal Prince2 exam, the foundation, the Agile certification is based on the same principle. You first do the Prince2 Agile Foundation, or you do just a normal Prince2 Foundation, and then on top of that, you could do the Agile Practitioner exam. The whole idea is that it's the best of the both worlds. You take the governance and the structure from Prince2, classical Prince2, and then you incorporate the flexibility and fluidity and the principle of Agile on the structure and governance of Prince2. And this is how you just bring the normal project manager, the normal project management merged with the Agile methodologies. So in my view, I think if you ask my opinion, I would go for PSM1 to start with, because you don't even have to take any trainings. I mean, if you're self-motivated, you can just go on their website. You can read the Scrum guide. You take the exam, you pass it, and off you go. And then to go for an advanced certification, you can go for Prince2 Agile. Because Prince2 Agile, just like PMI, it brings together the different flavors of Agile, Kanban and Scrum and extreme programming. All of them together give you a holistic view of everything, and then you have a very well-rounded exposure to the Agile methodologies. So with this slide, I'm done with this training, and thank you very much for your participation. And I'm just going to stop the recording now so that we can have a question or answer session.